Dillian the Body Snatcher right here. It's a champ. Big up to Sporting Icon. Subscribe. Otherwise, I might pay you guys a visit.
Right, so following the explosive, brutal knockout victory over Alexander Povetkin this past weekend, Dillian Whyte, the Body Snatcher, now the two-time WBC interim world heavyweight champion, it does have meaning, and I'll get into that as this video goes along. Of course, he gained revenge, redemption, whatever it may be. But of course, the talking point is going to be for Dillian Whyte is who is next. Now, Dillian is one of these kind of guys where the fans want to see him in these big named fights, these entertaining fights, okay? Now, of course, he's just come through another one. Dillian never fails to impress, does he? Like him or don't like him, win, lose or draw, he turns up and he gives everything that he's got, okay? So people tune in. That's why he's a pay-per-view fighter, because he does the numbers. People will tune in and click that red button. People will buy the tickets. That's why he is where he is. Bearing in mind, that was his 37th fight. 37 fights, amateur and pro combined. Look at his resume. He's now got a Hall of Famer on his resume in Alexander Povetkin, okay? Now, I know some people criticize, so before we get into the whole Trevor Bryan thing, I know some people criticize Dillian Whyte's performance. I mean, you've really got to be digging deep to try and find criticism. You really have to. People say Alexander Povetkin's old. Okay, are you the same people who was predicting that Povetkin was going to beat Dillian Whyte? Are you the same people who's been calling for Dillian Whyte to fight Luis Ortiz, who's older than Alexander Povetkin? Luis Ortiz, who never even qualified for the Olympics. Alexander Povetkin got a gold medal. Luis Ortiz, who never won a world championship. Alexander Povetkin, who won multiple world championships as an amateur. And, of course, as a pro as well. The WBA version. Luis Ortiz has never done that. Luis Ortiz has nowhere near, not even a 5 or 10% of what Alexander Povetkin has fought. So, if you want to really go down that route and hate on it and say Alexander Povetkin, he looked every day of his 41 years of age, cool, that's fine. Do what you got to do, but to keep Luis Ortiz's name out of your mouth. Simple as that, really, isn't it? Don't get me wrong, I would like to see Dillian Whyte take on Luis Ortiz. But of course, people will inevitably want to see the likes of Dillian Whyte versus Deontay Wilder or Andy Ruiz Jr. or the winner of Usyk and Joe Joyce and quite a few other names. Of course he would. Now, Dillian, for me, I think that if anybody deserves a gimme fight, a bit of a touch and fight, is Dillian Whyte. Has he not? He's been learning on the job. Whether people like that or whether they don't, that is what it is. Name me anybody else out there, I've said this before, I'll say it again, name me one other heavyweight out there, 37 fights, amateur and pro combined, who has done what Dillian Whyte has done. I bet you can't name one. Now, when it comes to Trevor Bryan, Trevor Bryan, the WBA regular world heavyweight champion, unfortunate as it may be, it's a legitimate world title. I don't particularly like it myself. I don't think that belt has any kind of credibility whatsoever. It hasn't done for quite a few years. In my opinion, ever since David Hale had it. It hasn't had a credible name holding that belt. Ruslan Chagaev, I mean, you could argue that one for sure. But then Lucas Brown, okay, he wins that belt. Then something happens with the PEDs. So he gets stripped of the belt. Then it gets put up in the air for what's going to be a tournament, but then doesn't quite turn out to be a tournament. There's maybe Lucas Brown versus Trevor Bryan, and then it's changed to Lucas Brown versus Shannon Briggs, and it's Shannon Briggs versus Trevor Bryan, and Manuel Charr gets thrown in the mix, and Alexander Ustinov gets thrown in the mix. That belt has been a walking, living curse for the past few years now. And that belt has no credibility whatsoever, let alone the fact that they stripped Manuel Charr. I don't disagree with him stripping Manuel Charr, by the way. Again, this is a guy who hasn't fought since he won the belt 2.5 years ago, however long it was, against Alexander Ustinov, of all damn people. Okay, but he was supposed to have taken on Trevor Bryan. According to Manuel Charr, there's some kind of tampering going on with his paperwork, with his visas, or whatever it may be, that's blocked him from coming into the United States of America, into Florida, to defend that belt against Trevor Bryan. The WBA then strip Manuel Charr and put it as a vacant belt on the line for Trevor Bryan against who? Another Don King fighter, Trevor Bryan and Bermane Stiverne, both Don King fighters. Coincidental? No, of course it's not. Bermane Stiverne, who the walking potato sack with dreadlocks, as Joe Joyce once coined him, who's lost, 4 or 5 of his last 6 fights, whatever it may be, absolute bum that he is, he gets a world heavyweight title fight against Trevor Bryan. Talk about boxing politics. talk about that. Anyway, as far as Dillian Whyte taking on Trevor Bryan, which of course is the nature of this video, is it an interesting fight? It's an interesting fight only because that belt's on the line. Now, for me, as I started off with the video by saying he's now a two-time WBC interim world heavyweight champion. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure most of you do by now. For those of you who watch me, I've said it multiple times. Holding that belt that Dillian Whyte now holds, again, of course now he holds, means that if anything was to happen with Tyson Fury, as in vacate the belt or get stripped of the belt, Dillian would become the automatic full WBC heavyweight champion of the world. Okay, no interim fight, no final eliminator, nothing like that. That's what interim status means. So for me, I think that belt that Dillian holds is more credible than the WBA regular world heavyweight title that Trevor Bryan holds. Honestly, I do. I don't think, because when you look at the WBA, are they going to allow Trevor Bryan to take on Dillian Whyte? Would it be even deemed as some form of unification in some kind of weird, bizarre way? Maybe they could, but it's unlikely. It's unlikely. And I do feel that Trevor Bryan, he is being kept on ice for Deontay Wilder. That's why Wilder is ranked so high. But of course, he probably end up taking on, say, Bogdan Dinu, who's ranked, number 2 in the WBA or number 3 in the WBA. And then the winner will go take on Trevor Bryan for that belt. That's how it's being set up. The WBA are very, very biased with the PBC. We've seen that 9 out of the top 15 are PBC fighters, including the likes of Chris Arreola. That will tell you the whole story that you ever need to know. All right. But if Don King was willing to allow Trevor Bryan to take on Dillian Whyte, unlikely. But if he is, and Dillian Whyte does get the green light to be able to fight him, whether unification or not, or just straight for Trevor Bryan's belt, even though it is a step down in my opinion as far as the belts are concerned, would that victory over Trevor Bryan mean that much? It would, because I think Dillian Whyte would actually bring legitimacy to that belt. Because a lot of people there have forgotten that it's actually a true world heavyweight title. Joshua is of course WBA super champion. Trevor Bryan is the WBA regular. They're not going to call Anthony Joshua to fight Trevor Bryan, are they? It's very unlikely that that's going to happen for the longest time. And who in the hell wants to see that? Nobody, okay? That's not a unification. That's not consolidating the belts. As the WBA once said, that they want to consolidate the super and the regular belts. They've been saying this for years and have yet to do it. They had the prime opportunity to do it when Keith Thurman took on Manny Pacquiao for the welterweight versions of their belts. But straight after the fight, Manny Pacquiao super champion, and the regular belt gets put on the line for somebody else. Is it Ugas, whatever? Now, the thing is, it's just bizarre though. It's a bizarre situation with the WBA. It really is. But would I watch that fight? Yes, of course I would. I'll watch all Dillian Whyte fights. I do feel that Dillian Whyte should have an easier touch. I think Trevor Bryan, in theory, should be a bit of an easier touch. Should be an easy touch. But I think Dillian deserves... Actually, you know what? Yeah. Trevor Bryan. That's probably an ideal opponent for Dillian Whyte. Probably ideal now. He goes out there, knocks out Trevor Bryan, becomes a WBA regular world heavyweight champion. He's then a legitimate world heavyweight champion because, again, he's not going to get a Wilder or a Ruiz anytime soon, and he's not going to get the winner of Fury and Joshua for at least early part of 2022. It's not going to happen. It really isn't. Don't get me wrong, I would love nothing more than for Dillian Whyte to take on Tyson Fury. And maybe the WBC may call that. Maybe the WBC may say, well, if you don't hurry up and maybe sign and sort a venue and a date out for this undisputed fight with Anthony Joshua, then you've got to have to go fight Dillian Whyte. They may do that. I don't know. But either way, I think a Dillian Whyte versus a Trevor Bryan, it's an interesting fight. And as I said before, I think Dillian Whyte would bring some kind of credibility to that belt. People would start looking at it rather than a belt that people just couldn't care less about, to be honest with you. Ever since pretty much David Haye lost to Vladimir Klitschko, people haven't really been speaking about that belt, have they? Maybe over in like the Baltics and whatever else, and Russia and whatever, with Ruslan Chagayev, but since that moment, not really. People haven't been talking about that belt, not in a good light. If anything, it's been seen as a curse, hasn't it? It really has. Anyway, Dillian Whyte would like Trevor Bryan. Would Trevor Bryan like Dillian Whyte? I doubt it very much, but I'd love to be wrong. Drop your thoughts below, click thumbs up, subscribe, catch you all in the next video.